Hi everybody, Joe Pisapia from FantasyPros here. The most efficient way to get ready for your upcoming league drafts is to run as many mock drafts as you can. Getting familiar with where you're picking and the possible scenarios for all of your draft picks is key in being prepared for any situation that may arise on draft day. The mock draft simulator is the ultimate tool to help you complete realistic mock drafts in minutes with no waiting in between picks. As a premium subscriber, you can mock draft with custom settings from your synced leagues, which will take keepers, draft order, scoring rules, and roster positions all into account. This will help you quickly test out different draft strategies so you can figure out what works best for you. You'll also receive instant expert advice for each pick, plus you'll get a draft grade with in-depth analysis so you can get immediate insights on how well you drafted and what you can do to improve. Let's dive into the different features in the draft simulator and show you how quick and easy it is to start mock drafting like the pros. On the draft configuration page, you can customize your mock draft settings. If you are a premium user and you have synced your league in Draft Wizard, you can mock draft using your league's specific settings and keepers by selecting your synced league at the top of the page. The Draft Against section allows you to choose the rankings that the bot teams will use to draft against you in the simulation. You can choose the draft settings against expert rankings, average draft position, and pre-draft rankings of various host sites. The ADP and pre-draft ranking options are helpful if you're drafting on a specific league host site like Sleeper or Yahoo, and the managers in your league are influenced by the ADP or pre-draft rankings in that draft room. The Position Values section allows you to customize the value of each position to match the tendencies of how your league typically drafts. For example, if you know the managers in your league will tend to value running back more than other positions, you can set the position value of running back as slightly high, and the bot teams will now adjust to draft running back earlier than normal. These settings will help make the draft simulation more realistic. After your settings are all configured, click Start Your Draft to kick off the draft simulation. Your cheat sheet can be found in the rankings column on the left or in the cheat sheets view. By default, we use the latest expert consensus rankings as your cheat sheet. If you want to use a cheat sheet that you created in the cheat sheet creator, you can select the cheat sheet by clicking the drop-down in the Rankings tab. In the Rankings tab, there are percentages next to each player. These are the pick predictor percentages, which are the odds that the player will be drafted before your next pick. The pick predictor will help you gauge if you can wait one more round before grabbing the player you really want, or if you should pick him right now. This feature comes in handy in the later rounds and will keep you from reaching for players too early. In the suggestions view, we will recommend 4 players that you should consider drafting in this round. The percentages next to each player indicate the percentage of experts from our consensus rankings that would draft the player. For example, 65% of experts recommend drafting Davante Adams ahead of the other 3 suggested players. Under each player, you can view the player's ADP, strength of schedule, last year's stats, this year's projections, and more. You'll also notice that if you have assigned tags to players in the cheat sheet creator, they will appear in suggestions view and in the rankings column as a colored dot next to the player to help you quickly identify your players of interest. You can suggest another player by clicking the button at the bottom of the suggestions view. Click the draft button to draft the player onto your team, and the simulation will continue to your next pick. You don't need to wait for other managers to make their picks, which saves you time and lets you complete more mock drafts faster. If you want to customize your player recommendations, or if you want to experiment with different strategies, click the More Settings button. This will allow you to choose the number of suggested players for each pick and tailor your suggestions around a draft strategy that you can choose or create. For example, if I wanted to try out the late round QB strategy, no QBs will be suggested to me until the last few rounds of the draft. You can test out these different strategies and figure out what works best for you. One of the major advantages of using the draft simulator is that you can test out different scenarios on the fly by editing previous picks that were made by the bot teams. You can edit picks by going into the draft log or draft board and hovering over the player that you want to edit for the pick. Click the Edit button, and you can now select a different player for that team. This allows you to quickly test out what-if scenarios and help you determine what the best strategy is for each scenario without restarting the entire mock draft. You can also undo your own picks by clicking the Undo button in the top bar if you didn't feel good about the previous pick you made, and if you want to see what would happen if you picked a different player instead. From round 4 onwards, when it's your turn to pick, you'll be shown a Pick Insights display in the lower right corner of the draft room, which will spotlight potential trends or roster needs before your next pick so you can stay ahead of the curve. You can click the notification to expand the Pick Insights. We'll show you the number of teams that need a starting quarterback or tight end before your next pick, and if there are only a couple of players left in a player tier from your cheat sheet, we'll let you know. After completing your mock draft, we'll give you a grade based on our consensus rankings. You can also check how Tags, Yates, Dan, and even me rate your team. For more details, click the Projected Standings button and you'll be directed to our Draft Analyzer. Here you can see how your team stacks up against the competition, as well as get additional expert opinions and post-draft insights like your draft steals, reaches, and top players. That wraps up this quick overview of some of the powerful features available in the Draft Simulator that will help you complete realistic mock drafts in minutes. Don't waste any more time. Add your league in Draft Wizard and start mock drafting like the pros.